Hello everyone, my name is Michael McCann, and welcome to the ninth and final part in this series in creating a character in Blender 2.77. In the last part, we finished the armature, which allows us to pose our character. Now let's use shape keys to give the character different facial expressions. And I'm going to be keeping it pretty basic. We're not going to set up any drivers or anything like that. That's for a more advanced tutorial in the future. So with the character selected, I'm going to come over to Shape Keys and click on the little Add tab, which adds the basis. And the basis stores all of the information of how the mesh is currently before we make any changes to it with Shape Keys. And the first shape key that we'll do is a blinking animation. So we can select the eye. And because we want the eyelids to rotate around the eye, we need to press Shift S and choose Cursor to Selected. And it's important to have your X mirror on, but I have the eye selected, so we need to select the character. And make sure that your X mirror is selected, because now we can just edit one side, and it will of course affect the other as well. So we'll add a new shape key, and this one will be called Blink. And again, with that X mirror selected, we can rotate one side and it will affect the other as well. But we need to change our pivot point to the 3D cursor. Now I'll go into the right orthographic view, and I can just rotate the top and bottom eyelids until they meet in the middle. And now if I tab out of edit mode, I can use this value slider to make the character blink. One thing you might notice though is that the eyelids do appear to go through the eyes a little there at the edges. So one thing that we can do to fix that is just tab back into edit mode, and we'll select the front faces on the top and bottom eyelids, and we'll just move them forward a little. Now when they rotate, they should go beyond the eye. Okay, so that looks good. I can still see a tiny little gap there in the corner, which I think we tried to fix that in one of the last videos, but it still appears to be there. So we can go ahead and maybe scale the eyes in a little. It's important to make sure that you are in the basis shape key when you do any permanent adjustments. Otherwise, it will only affect the shape key that's selected. So I'll just select the loop around the eye and scale this in. And of course it scales both sides because X mirror is on still. So now I'll go back to blink, and yeah, it's still visible. But you know what? Since the gap is only visible when the eyes are closed, perhaps we can edit this in the blink shape key. So we'll just make that smaller so that it's closed up. And it still shows. But I think that it's fine. Again, there will be fur in the corner of the eyes, and I really don't think it will ever show up in the render itself. Okay, so let's move on to some other shape keys. One thing that we will want to be able to control are the character's eyebrows. So let's create a new shape key, and we'll call this brow.l because we'll do each one separately. And we'll of course turn the X mirror off so it only affects the one side. Now I'll tab into edit mode and also turn the proportional editing on to, I set mine to connected. And first I'll select the center vertex and I'll move that down a bit. And then select the top vertices above the left eye, and I'll just move them up. And I don't want to be pivoting around the 3D cursor anymore, so I'll switch that back to median point. And with the middle mouse button, I can adjust the fall off of the proportional editing because I don't want too much of the top of the head to come up. It's basically just the brow is what I want to move. And I think that looks okay. We can just test it out with the value slider. And yeah, it looks pretty good. One thing that we can do is under range, we can set this minimum value to -1. And this sort of inverts the shape key. So now the brow goes all the way down when you slide the value down, and when you slide it all the way up, the brow will go up. And so now, of course, you'll want to do that again to the other side. So we'll just create another shape key and call that brow.r. And just repeat those same steps that you did for the left side. But now let's move on to actually creating full expressions. So we'll create another shape key and we'll call this one angry. And now I'll select that center vertex, and with proportional editing I'll pull it down. And then let's turn on the X mirror again. And in front orthographic view, I'll just pull that brow down and maybe pull it forward as well, which gives him sort of angry eyes. And there really doesn't need to be too much done with the mouth. The mouth already kind of looks okay. But just with that little bit of editing with the eyebrows, you can completely change his expression. And now with the slider, we can just, animate that really easily. So let's create another one that will have to edit the mouth as well. We'll call this one sad. And this time, rather than editing the top of the brow, I want to edit the side or the corner of the brow and bring it down so that he looks worried or, a little, distressed or sad. Maybe pull it forward a bit. And that looks pretty good. And now also I can select the vertex in the corner of the mouth, and I can pull that down as well. Maybe push it in a little. Okay, and I think that looks pretty good. I do recommend spending more than just a few moments on each expression, though. This is just to show you how quickly you can set up a shape key for an expression really fast and really easy. But yeah, definitely spend maybe some more time on it. Another tip is you can actually mix the shape keys. So, you can give a little bit of value to the angry and a little bit of value to the sad, and you sometimes you wind up getting some strange and curious expressions. Now we want to set up a shape key to control how wide the mouth is open. So we'll create a new shape key and we'll call this mouth open. And in edit mode, I'll just select all of these faces around the lower jaw and chin. And then go inside of the mouth and select all of the lower teeth and the gums. And we don't need to worry about the tongue right now. After we lower the bottom jaw and the inside of the mouth, then we can worry about the tongue. Maybe not these faces where it meets the upper jaw. I think this looks pretty good. So we'll just pull this down with G. And I have my proportional editing set to connected. And I'm just rotating and pulling down with G. And now right under the chin, I can select these faces to sort of round out that curve a little more. And now I can go ahead and select the tip of the tongue and the faces around it. And from right orthographic view, I'll just pull that down and rotate it so that it fits inside of the mouth. Okay, and so now we have some control over how wide the mouth is open or closed for our renders. One important thing that I forgot to mention in the last video in regards to the armature is if we go over to our modifiers, if we turn on all the hair so that it's visible, you can see that parts of it look a little strange in some areas. And if you try to animate, the hair doesn't follow along with the mesh and the armature. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that the armature is set all the way to the top. Okay, so now if you move the armature, the hair follows along. And it still looks a little funny in some places because you also need to move the subdivision surface modifier to the top as well, if it isn't already. Okay, and so now everything is working as it should. So let's go back to doing a few more shape keys. I'd like to do maybe one for creating a smile, and then maybe some separate ones for controlling each side of the mouth individually. So we'll create another shape key, and I'll just call this one smile. And X mirror is still turned on, as well as the proportional editing is still set to connected. So I can select this corner vertex and move it up and back and maybe out along the x-axis, and that makes him appear as though he's smiling. Okay, that looks pretty good, but I'm not crazy about how the tooth is sort of intersecting with the lower part of the mouth. So maybe we can make some adjustments to that. I'll just select the tooth and that loop right there around the gum, and pull it out, but that doesn't really look that good, so maybe I'll actually try to pull it in so that it's on the inside of the mouth, and I think that looks a little better. Okay, so I think we're nearly done with the shape keys. I would like to set it up so that we can just control one side of the mouth, though. So, if in the instance that you would want your character to have sort of a smirking type expression. So let's turn off the X mirror, and we'll create a new shape key. And I'll just call this one left smile. And I'll go back to that smile shape key and set the value back down to 0. And if you wanted to, you could set the minimum value under range down, which would allow you to give the character a little bit of a frown, which could be useful. So I'll switch back to the left smile shape key and tab into edit mode. And with the proportional editing still on, I can just pull that vertex back and up and make sure that the teeth aren't intersecting with the lower lip or the bottom jaw. And now he has this cool, like, smirking expression. Which you could then add along with some other shape keys as well. So if I take the left smile all the way up, and then like I go to my angry shape key, and I bring his eyes down, now he kind of looks mischievous, like he's planning something, has like an evil plan. I'll switch over to my rendered view. And yeah, like his expression's like he's, up to no good. So yeah, it's pretty interesting what combinations of shape keys you can put together, and what range of expressions you can sort of discover just by mixing a few of them together. But I think that's probably it for the shape keys, at least for this series. I am planning to do a more, I guess, thorough character creation tutorial in the future. But for right now, let's move on to, we need to rig the eyes so that we can have them looking in different directions. So I'll select the left eye, and I'll type Shift S and choose Cursor to Selected. And then I'll select the armature and go into Edit Mode. And now I'll type Shift A, and that will automatically add a bone to the 3D cursor. So if I hold Control, I can just snap the end down so that it's facing forward. And I'll rename this I.L. And now I'll press Shift C, which puts the cursor in the center. And with that bone still selected, I'll type Shift D, which duplicates it. And now I'll change my pivot point to the 3D cursor, and I'll go to Armature, and then Mirror, and choose X Local. And now I'll flip the names. And with both of those bones selected, I'll use Shift D to duplicate them and lock them to the Y-axis so that they move directly out in front of the eyes. And I can rename them I_control.L and I_control.R. Now if I switch over to pose mode, I can select that control bone and then shift select the eye bone and use Shift I and select to active bone. Now I'll come over to the bone constraints and change the chain length to 1. And I'll do the same thing for the other side. Shift I to active bone and a chain length of 1. Okay, now I'll flip back to edit mode and I'll select these two control bones and use Shift S and choose Cursor to Selected, which puts it right in the middle. And if I use Shift A, it'll add a bone right there at the 3D cursor. And I'll go ahead and rename it Eye Controller. And of course I spelled it wrong, but it's okay because we know what it is. So let's select the outer controller bones and then shift select the middle bone and use Control P and choose Keep Offset, and that parents those little controller bones to the main control bone. And we'll do the same thing with the eye bones. We'll need to parent those to the head. And so now if we go into pose mode and just select the main controller bone and move it around, those eyes should follow, but we still need to parent the eyes to the eye bones. So first just select the eye in object mode and then shift select the bone and go into pose mode. And if you've done that right, the eye will be outlined in orange. So then you just want to type Control P and then select bone And now do the same thing for the other side. Select the eye and then shift select the bone. Go into pose mode. And then Control P and select bone. And now everything should be parented properly. If you move the control bone, the eye should follow. So let's go into our rendered view and just check to make sure that this is doing what it should. I'll just split my screen and then use 5 on the number pad to go into perspective view. And so now if I move the control bone around, the eyes follow, and it looks pretty good. So I think that this character is ready for a test render now. And I did want to say thank you to all of you for being very supportive through the series. I actually learned a lot from many of you who, gave tips in the comments. And you all had very nice things to say about the series, and I am planning on doing a more character creation series in the future, some of which will be a little more advanced, but this was just to kind of get some of you started who are into the whole concept of wanting to create a character. Okay, so let's get this guy set up. Let's move the eye controller bone so that it's looking directly into the camera. Okay. And now we'll give him a few of the expressions with shape keys. We'll move the right brow up a little. Maybe close the eyes just a bit, and then give him a little bit of a smile. And now we are ready for a test render. So that's it, guys. This is the end of this series. So thanks again for watching, and again for being so supportive, and I will see you in the next video.